Semper Fi, everyone. Welcome to the latest installment of Recon Jack. I'm your host, U.S. Marine veteran and historian Chuck Lynch. Before I get too far ahead of myself and forget to mention, I would like to give a special thanks to all of my over 500 subscribers out there who have helped give me the encouragement to do this. If you haven't already subscribed to Real History, please stop over there to check out the awesome work of both Jared and Andy. Without the huge help from both of those two fine gentlemen, I doubt that Recon Jack would ever come into existence. Also, a big shout out to all of you who have emailed me at recon_jack@hotmail.com. I hope to use your advice and information to start some new episodes in the following weeks. On today's episode of Recon Jack, I'll discuss the United States Marine Corps Non-Commissioned Officer's Sword, which is a sword worn by both non-commissioned officers and staff non-commissioned officers of the United States Marine Corps. For ease of this discussion, I will simply refer to the blade as the Marine NCO Sword. Most Marines that fall under the category of Marine NCO or Staff NCO are mandated to take a leadership course. Part of these requirements are for Marines to complete multiple drills, and one of the stationary drills is sword manual. If you ever have the chance to watch one of these drills, whether in person or by means of recorded video, they're definitely an interesting event with a lot of work and history behind it. Marine NCO swords feature a cast brass hilt with a half basket guard, leather wrap grip bound with twisted brass wire, a slightly curved single-edge blade with a wide central fuller and short false edge, and a black leather scabbard with two brass mounts, including an upper mount with a stud for carrying in a leather belt frog and a brass tip with drag. U.S. Marine officers and NCOs have carried swords since the American Revolutionary War. Until the early 20th century, they were carried for use in combat while aboard naval vessels, during amphibious assault landings, as well as combat excursions further inland. I will eventually further explain in detail the importance of the wear of a high leather stock that went around the neck for protection from slashing blades in battle. During the earliest years, the swords worn by Marine NCOs are believed to have been based on Army patterns, though not necessarily the exact swords used by Army NCOs. By approximately the mid-1820s, however, Marine NCOs began wearing distinctive short sabers with cast brass eagle head hilts and curved blades. About this same time, in 1826, Marine Corps officers also began wearing a distinctive new sword of the Mameluke style, similar to those worn today. For more information of the U.S. Marine Officer Sword, please feel free to check out episode 6 of this channel. In 1859, a completely new sword pattern was introduced for Marine Corps officers, who were instructed to wear the same sword then worn by Army foot officers since 1850. Also in 1859, a similar sword was authorized for wear by Marine NCOs so that the swords worn by Marine officers and NCOs appeared to share very nearly the same pattern and characteristics. The Marine NCO version, though similar to that worn by Marine officers, had several differences. Among the most notable NCO swords had plain brass hilts and scabbard mounts, whereas officers' hilts and scabbard mounts normally were gilt. Also, the grips on NCO swords were wrapped with leather, whereas those for officers were usually covered with sharkskin. Finally, NCO scabbards had only two scabbard mounts, consisting of a top mount with frog stud and a scabbard tip, whereas officer sword scabbards bore three mounts, including upper and middle mounts fitted with carrying rings. For perhaps not completely obvious reasons, Marine officers felt the need to distinguish themselves from NCOs with a slightly more expensive and ornate design. The NCO sword was adopted in 1859, and its pattern after the United States Army Foot Officer Sword of 1850, also with minor differences. Model 1859 Marine NCO swords were initially equipped with heavy, wide blades similar in shape and weight to those typically used on standard Army 1850 foot officer swords. However, unlike the Army officers' blades, the blades on early NCO swords of the Marine Corps were polished bright but not etched. The familiar etched designs on Marine NCO swords were authorized in 1875 regulations, and they have been a standard feature of Marine NCO swords ever since. That same year, in 1875, Marine officers once again were permitted to wear their traditional Mameluke swords, which had been discontinued since 1859. At some point afterward, Marine staff NCOs wore swords fitted with carrying rings for attachment to sword belt slings, as opposed to traditional attachment by a stud and a sliding frog. This practice ceased during World War II and has since not continued. The only subsequent change significantly affecting Marine NCO swords was in 1918, when uniform regulations specified that blade width be reduced to the narrow dimensions seen today. Both of these changes were predominantly proposed to reduce production costs during both world wars. The sword worn by Marine NCOs since 1859 was also carried throughout the American Civil War. With only slight modifications since that time, it has maintained its distinctive and traditional appearance. Even though the 1852 Navy officer sword is older in design and original issue, it was discontinued until reauthorized during the 1900s. Therefore, the model 1859 Marine NCO sword is the oldest weapon in continued and unbroken service still in U.S. inventory, and continues service today as a Marine Corps drill and ceremonial sword. The sword's use is restricted now by regulation to ceremonial occasions by NCO or staff NCOs in charge of troops under arms, or at weddings and wedding receptions where at least one of those married is in uniform and has the rank of corporal or higher. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode of Recon Jack, and perhaps you've learned something new. I've only scratched the surface of some of the topics discussed today, so stay tuned for more episodes as I continue to discuss the hallowed histories, traditions, and individuals of the United States Marine Corps. As always, please feel free to like this video, subscribe to my channel, click that notification bell, and leave a comment in the section below. I always enjoy interacting with you folks, and please continue to send in those emails. As always, also be sure to tell a friend or family member, and until next time, Semper Fi and carry on.